Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TIMEOUT Podcast. I'm your host, Ari Bruckman. Joining us this week, our special guest is a former producer, but also spent time as a reporter in Miami covering Lebron James and Dwayne Wade's Heat finals run. She also covered the University of Miami's bowl games and really just has continued to do big things as a TV personality. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest this week, Miss Genna Mark. Genna, how are we doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So Genna, for everybody who's not too familiar with you, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give some context as to how you landed in Miami and really how did that journey as a reporter start up for you?
I'm from Miami. I went to college at SMU, transferred to the University of Miami. So basically my blood and DNA, everything about me is Miami. Got an internship straight out of college. I was writing and then just worked my way up. I did news, I did sports, as you very adequately mentioned during those LeBron, Dwayne Wade NBA finals runs. I then ended up in entertainment, covering movie junkets, moved to New York before the pandemic for a few years and have moved back to Miami where I'm now freelance covering the Miami Heat for an outlet called 5 Reasons Sports, which covers all South Florida sports. And I also have my podcast, Your Voice on the Mark, which I interview musicians and just discuss what they do and how they've been able to continue working during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you've been able to tap into sports, news, now doing your own podcast. You don't have to label yourself in any one category. Kind of gives you the flexibility to just be personable and interact and meet new people. What was the best part about covering that time with LeBron James and D Wade? And for you, like, what has been that driving factor? Because I'm sure you kind of put that up here. It's tough to really recreate that from time to time. But how have you been able to still go after, that same kind of feeling?
That's hard. Yeah, that's definitely like the pinnacle for any sports reporter, producer, any sports journalist, right? Is covering one, let alone both of those guys and Chris Bosh on what will be a Hall of Fame team down the line. And I was young. I graduated college right before LeBron came down to Miami. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. Thankfully, people trusted me and were like, here, take a microphone, go do it. Go to practice, go do it. And I was obviously eager and very ecstatic that they did it, but it also helped boost my confidence a little bit. And then I just kept doing it. I was, I'd stay post game late. Like Kobe Bryant, when he passed away, everyone talked about that one game in Miami where he went back on the court at 1 a.m. and started shooting. I was the first person to see that because everyone else was set up around the court doing their live shots on the other baseline. And I was sitting closer to where he went on the other side of the baseline to start shooting. And so I'm sitting there videoing on my phone and people started picking up on it. Rachel Nichols was sitting next to me, but no one else happened to see what was going on. So, it's moments like that boost your confidence, that, having the trust that people instilled in me from an early on, that was definitely the biggest reward for me. I think it was bigger than anything I would have learned anywhere.
Did you ever get a chance to interact with those guys in a way that obviously it's professional in that sense, but learn more about them to where they're kind of casual and they start to see you as a familiar face and kind of open up a little bit?
Yes. Obviously, when you're covering a team and you're there, with basketball, it's every day, every other day between game days and practices. You're traveling on the road to, the finals where you're there for 4 or 5 days in a city at a time. It's a positive because there's an innate trust that gets formed. And that to me is the biggest thing as a journalist, whether I'm producing or reporting. It's like, I want whoever I'm covering to trust me and trust what I'm doing. Those relationships help. So yeah, there was plenty of times where, I'd be at a restaurant in Miami. If Dwayne Wade was there, he would have seen me and said hi or whatever. My friends would all be geeked out about it. And I'd be like, hey, what's up? Please don't come over and say hello, But yeah, we definitely, I would say we're familiar with each other. I wouldn't say know each other because you only know what you know from those interactions in an arena or from a journalist athlete standpoint. it's not like I was like schmoozing with them and having wine after games or anything. So like there's a different form of no, but yes, to answer the question simply, yeah, for sure.
This is early on in your career. They trust you with something like this. At that point, then, what did you start to say to yourself about what was possible for you, and how did that change your perspective going forward?
It was very particular. It was during the NBA Finals in Dallas, Game 5. LeBron had just missed the shot to give the Heat the 1-point lead, which would have won the game. They then end up coming back to Miami and losing the series to Dallas. So basically it was, LeBron just blew the lead, right? That's what everyone's freaking out about. And we were all in the locker room. We're all in this huddle, and everyone's looking at me to interview him, or to ask the first question rather. And we're all like I know you know what it's like. I don't know how to explain to people. We're all packed in, like as you would see on TV. And everyone was like, just ask him. And I'm like, why do I have to be the one to ask him? And I didn't know it at the time, but they were all pushing me to do something that I didn't want to do. And what it did was I ended up doing it. And what it did was it really taught me that he knows I don't want to ask him any more than he wants to answer. And as uncomfortable as it is, he knows I still have a job to do. And so it really opened my eyes up to, you don't want to be that annoying reporter. You don't want to be the person that nobody wants to talk to because you always ask the bad or annoying questions, right? But they know you have a job to do. And so that was the key moment for me where I was like, I need to be that person. I need to be the one to ask those questions, because in a sense, he was kind of looking for it. And I was like, I don't want to do it. But everyone was just like, go ahead, ask. And I was like, okay, I'll ask. So that was definitely one of those first initial like eye-opening situations for me where I was like, I get it now.
Being 22, 23 then, and now looking back on it, I've seen on your website doing some research, you had the opportunity to interview The Rock. Or, you've had the opportunity to interview some really cool people, right? Steve Carell. How did being thrusted into that situation so early on help prepare you for those bigger moments down the road?
It taught me to really just stick to my gut. I always remove myself from, no matter who I'm interviewing or what the story is. I don't necessarily care what I want to know. I want to give people what they want to know. And people wanted to know, right? Well, LeBron, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? It wasn't about me and how uncomfortable I was. And whether I'm interviewing The Rock or I'm interviewing Dwayne Wade, it doesn't matter. People want to know certain things. And that moment was that initial, you learn what you learn in college, but you don't learn what to do in situations in college, right? Like we were told certain things. We were told the history of broadcasting, but okay, great, So what that moment did for me was it really showed me that it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I might want to know. Like, yeah, selfishly, I might throw in a question about something, but on a general basis, it's never about me. And it's always about the subject, because that's what people are watching and listening. They don't care if it's me or you or the next person standing there asking the question.
I love that. And frankly, when you're dealing with an audience too, that sports oriented, right now, everything's delivered to your phone. So if they're watching a post-game press conference, they probably watched the full game, right? Or they seeked out that video. They got hit with some alert from ESPN saying, LeBron says this, right? These words in a quote. And then you kind of swipe to see the rest of the video, right? Or click on this video and it'll kind of take you there. Because of all this information, and because people aren't sitting down necessarily watching these shows, because they're not, watching the full games like they used to, I think, anymore, Genna. How has your idea of an interview changed? You realize that people's attentions is just not there anymore. So how do you kind of navigate around that to still have success?
The medium you're doing this for dictates what the audience attention span is, right? So on a podcast, people are listening and watching for a longer period of time than they might be, on Twitter or an Instagram Live or a news broadcast. If it's a podcast, I channel it one way. If it's post game after a game, I could sit there and talk about 500 different things with the guys, but does the audience really care that's watching the 11:30 highlights? No, I have to compartmentalize a little bit. With actors, you said this, Steve Carell, I only have 4 minutes in those interviews. I don't have 20 minutes to stand at a locker and talk to Udonis Haslem if I want to. I don't think there's really one way to, like, across the board really answer that, because everything is it's a very different approach for every different thing. For the athlete stuff, I think about, what are people going home talking about? When people leave this building and they're turning on their radios to listen to the post game in their car ride home, what are they talking about? What are they mad about? What are they excited about? And those are initially how I form what I'm going to ask, especially first, because I want to get that out of the way. If I have more time, I can then take the conversation wherever I want to go.
It sounds like you almost have a plan kind of when you go in there. I know we talked about, you want to get the information for your audience, but when you're working in this time span, you can't control always how long the answer is going to be, right? And that sort of thing. So there's a guessing game element in there.
Totally.
But Genna, when you're dealing with these high pressure environments, right? I think oftentimes people forget that you're still a person and not just a reporter, right? These are still athletes, but they're athletes, but they're still people, right? And everybody has a way of kind of recentering their focus and bringing themselves back down so they can kind of decompress. What is it for you that you found has allowed you to be in those high pressure moments consistently, that you can still maintain control of your mind and just ultimately your work ethic?
I think you hit the nail on the head with that. They're people. In news, if you have to go knock on someone's door after some tragic story, they're people and they're mourning, right? If it's an athlete, he's doing his job those 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever sport they might be playing. But then he goes right into husband, dad, brother, son, or daughter if it's a woman athlete. So first and foremost, the biggest thing for me is just treating them like people, because that's what they are. They're not robots, especially celebrities and athletes. People think that they are robots. Yes, they can check off and on when they need to, but it doesn't matter. They're still human beings. And if you don't treat them that way, they're going to not want to have conversations, because they want to be treated like humans, right? Like, they get mad if paparazzi are taking pictures of their kids, rightfully so. They're human beings, they're parents, their children, their spouses. That's definitely the first thing that I'm always cognizant of.
I want to stay there for another minute here, Genna, but from an outsider perspective, because again, a lot of the fans, a lot of the viewers that are watching, not only the podcast, but just any sporting event, any interview in general, 60 minutes, whatever it is, they don't understand the amount of research and kind of everything that goes into that crunch time moment, right? That little bit, that little soundbite that we take and we're able to kind of produce content consistently out of. Can you kind of talk about what goes into that and just some tips and techniques for any young reporter or just anybody producing content now that you find are just effective of getting the information you need for your audience?
You can't control what they say, right? I could ask, and I learned this ironically doing movie junkets, because they're there for a mission, right? They're there to promote a movie. And so that's what they want to talk about. So no matter what I ask, they're going to throw in some sort of tie to the movie, even if that's not what I'm looking for, which is how I kind of came up with the games that I use to interview the actors, because I figured it was a way to break that. With athletes, you can't control them, but the difference with athletes is you're asking them, if it's after a game, you're asking them based off of what just happened. While I can't predict if LeBron is going to say it's about blank time, like he said when he won his first ring, it wasn't to me, but it's the quote that everybody remembers. You can't predict he's going to say that, but you ask him about what just happened. Well, what just happened? He just won, and he's now an NBA champion for the first time. So it's hard to expect what they're going to say. But again, when you cover a team and you're around them for as much as I was around, you also kind of know, and you can read body language. Like, I can tell you when certain guys, I'm like, I'm not even going to go there today. Like, honestly, I'll stand there, I'll stick the mic in their face, I'll get whatever they say to the group, but I am not going to push that button. And that goes back to also me wanting that trust to still, be intact. So with the athlete stuff, it's different. It's very different. But, you just hope that they're going to give you an honest answer. And they usually do, because it just happened. You're asking them about something that literally they can't deny it, right? The game just happened. If you have 24 turnovers, they can't say, no, we didn't. So they know that, they also know, when they see us coming in, they know, well, you're going to ask me about what just happened. You're going to ask me about missing 15 3-pointers. You're going to ask me about Goran Dragic going down in the finals tonight, even though we have a game tomorrow, because he just got hurt and he's one of our best players. So they also expect a certain topic of conversation to a certain degree.
I want to go back to the games that you were talking about for some of the actors that you interview. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think people were kind of like, what games, right?
Well, so while doing movie junket reporting, I realized I wanted to take the pressure off of it, because it's pressure for us as journalists, but it's also pressure for the actors, because they need to make sure they get a message out, right? They're there to promote a movie. It's bigger than them. It's not their own agenda. It's a studio's agenda, and it's kind of part of what they have to do for the role. And I realized, I'm someone who really likes to bring people's personalities through my interviews. That's always my goal. And, I want you to know that Jamie Foxx is as nice and sweet as he is funny, or that The Rock is as goofy as he is athletic. I want you to know those things when I leave when you leave my interview, however you watched it. So that led me to coming up with games based on the movie I was interviewing for. So for example, I hate using it, but it's the one everybody likes. For 50 Shades Freed, I made 50 questions, and none of them were about like anything X-rated or any of that. And I put them on the backs of 50 swatches of gray paint. And I had a poster board, and it was lined from the lightest shade of gray to the darkest. And they basically had to pick the questions off the board. So I didn't even know where the interview was going, because I didn't know what they were going to pick. But basically what it did was it broke them. I got different answers than other people got. It wasn't like I had to sit down and be like, okay, so talk to me about the movie. It was one of the questions, I think Dakota Johnson picked, it was about if she had to write the 4th installment of the franchise, what would she do? And she totally broke people's hearts with it. But it was a way to get her to say that, where if I was sitting there asking her that question, like a normal interview, I wouldn't have gotten that answer. She probably would have been like, oh, I have no idea. And instead, I got gold, is what I like to refer to it as. So that's basically a summary of that, which it's carried me through to now. I do it with athletes now. I do it with everyone.
How has it changed now that you're doing it with athletes?
The athletes like it. With the athletes, it's very out of realm for them. So the athletes like it. I've done it with Shaq. That was fun. Like I said, they're people. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy it. They don't want, and I want them to enjoy it. I don't want them to dread having to sit across from me with a microphone. So, they seem to have fun so far. I haven't come across one that hasn't, but broadcaster's jinx, I just jinxed myself. Next athlete's going to be like, what is this?
No, I think it's great. And look, when you find ways to trigger, right, like the brain differently, like when you find ways you're interacting, and this is what I think, because I'm big on understanding the psychology of why people do what they do, and why was this important to you? People joke around about, hey, you can give a man a fish, right? He'll be good for the day. You teach a man to fish, how to fish, and he'll be good for life. But ultimately, just the understanding the why you're doing what you're doing is just as important as actually getting the result. When you're working with these athletes and you're coming up with these games, there's something I think that you're doing that's really, really unique, Genna, and just triggering their mind to just say, wow, this is different. Different's okay. Different's cool. I'm used to the same thing every day. This broke my routine. Hey, it breaks my thought pattern. Now all of a sudden, this is kind of cool. But let's ride with it. Let's see where it goes. I think that's a great idea. For some of the younger viewers here who are maybe they're not working with those kinds of individuals yet, for anybody that they go to interview, is there a way that they should be thinking about doing the interview? Is there something that you think is a good just kind of format or just cycle of questions that you ask yourself about how to be prepared to really get the best out of the interviewee?
I think the first thing is to be true to you. Everyone, because of my hair, used to refer to me as mini Rachel Nichols. And I was like, I love her. She's a pioneer in this business for women, but like, she's already there. You know, I want to be me. And so I think you have to stay true to who you are as a person, no matter who you're having a conversation with or interviewing. And I think with me, I want like something that's true to who I am is I want whoever I'm interviewing to really enjoy, whether it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, or an hour of what I'm doing with them. And if that means a game, then that's a game. For me, it just happened to be that way because it was something that I could literally travel with if I had to go to LA or Paris or wherever I was flying for movie junkets. So the game was just something that could come with me. This is awful of me to admit, but I never have a preconceived list of questions. I have ideas of what I want to talk about. I have thoughts of where I want the conversation to maybe go. But I hate being scripted, and everyone makes fun of me for it. But the reason why I hate being scripted is because I want to be able, if you were to just now tell me something that nobody had ever heard and nobody had ever expected you to say, I want to be able to react to that. And if I have a list that I'm sticking to, that I'm reading my phone or the piece of paper, it breaks me from being able to actually converse with you. What I do is I research. I spend so much time researching, more so than I spend probably doing the interviews total. Like it's ridiculous. But I oversaturate myself so I know, and I'm confident enough in what I know, that wherever this conversation may take me, I'm okay. I'm okay if we go left. I'm okay if we keep heading straight. I'm okay if we go right. And to me, as an interviewer, that feeds off to them. So if they can sit there and tell me anything, and I can feel okay reacting and just pivoting a little bit, because you can't, like I said before, you can't predict what they're going to tell you. I can ask you what color is an apple, and they could tell me red, green, or yellow. How do I know what color they're going to pick? A lot of veterans always laugh at me because I'm always like, I'm not going in with a list. I'm not going in with a script. Don't give it to me. I don't want to see it. But I have an agenda. I know what I want to, I know I want you to know Dakota Johnson's hilarious as a person. That being said, I walk in and I just, I let it go where it's meant to be taken.
Real good information there about what's natural. And I think there's a fine line too that people try and walk, right? Because I think it's okay too, especially when you're starting your career, to have that script that almost as like a cushion. So if nobody's saying anything or he starts talking or she starts talking about something that you didn't know anything about, you kind of pull this out of your pocket. Well, hey, I knew that, hey, I know that you did this. How has this helped you with this, right? You were involved in some philanthropy, right? I think that's like a different part of your life. Talk to me about why that's so important. And what organizations do you work with that, hit so close to home for you that you feel you have to give back?
I've always been very grateful and appreciative to have what I have, to, live the life I live. I don't ever wake up ungrateful. And I know that there's people out there that are in situations that they didn't ask for. They were born into these situations, a lot of them. And my parents instilled in my siblings and myself, philanthropy is big. Charity is huge. If you cannot help one single person, then what are you doing? So I learned it. It was basically, it was a part of life at any age for me because of my parents. But I think for me now as an adult, why it's so important is because if I can make someone smile for 1 second that hasn't, felt loved or good or whatever the it is, everyone deserves to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel respected. And a lot of what I do is with kids. And I gravitate to kids because, a lot of times they're born into situations that are beyond their control. We don't ask for the parents we're born to, right? We don't ask for living in Miami or living in Illinois. Like, but that's what the hand we're dealt. And so to me, I think every child deserves a fair chance. If I can find a way to help get them out of whatever they might be in to then better their lives, then why wouldn't I do it? That's how I look at it.
I love that. That it's about having that impact. The biggest part about giving back to me is that when you're giving back in any way to anyone, even if it's just a favor of grabbing the door for somebody, it's giving without the expectation of receiving. For some kids now graduating school, 2020 has been a tough time to get a job in the reporting industry. But whether it's news, whether it's sports, whether it's a freelance reporter, what are some tips that you think would be useful that you wish you knew when you first started out?
Network as much as you can, especially now when jobs might be very hard to come by. I know myself, I'm trying to get back into full time and it's very difficult. And especially on the entertainment side, when there's no red carpets or things like that, it's even more difficult. Build relationships, nourish those relationships. One of my mentors is Laura Oakman, and I'm a part of a group called Galvanize that she started. I think I was in her second boot camp that she ever did for women reporters. And the way I got to her was through another relationship, and that relationship was Stuart Scott. Now I had no idea what my relationship with Stuart Scott was going to be, but then all of a sudden one day he's like, "Here, you need to call Laura." And I was like, "Why?" And he just call her. So you never know where relationships can take you. And she's been in my corner, and she's been a support system and a sounding board, and she's been one of the biggest advocates for anything and everything if I need it. So to me, relationships are key. You know, I still talk to people from that news station in Miami years after leaving. The news director actually, he called me one day, and at the start of all this, it was like 10:30 at night, and he called me. He's like, "I'm sorry, but I know you're not sleeping, but I need a favor for a story." And I helped him with it, you know? And that helps, because then when there is an opportunity, you're on their radar, you're in their mind, they know they can rely on you. You don't want to be the person that just is like, "Hey, I need a favor," or I need a job, help me. You want to be there even when there's nothing necessarily in it for you, as you said before. The other thing I would say is do anything and everything. I mean, I was an overnight writer. I would go to the station at 2 a.m., leave at 9. I wrote the morning news. I'd go to a Heat practice. I'd go to a Dolphins practice. I'd go to the University of Miami Hurricanes practices. I'd work Saturday nights, you know, after football for Kane's locker room, all on my own free time. But I would go to the sports EP and I'd be like, "Listen, I want to do it. What can I do?" And that is part of that earning that trust that I earned back when I was starting out. And so I think if you show that you're willing to do anything, no job is too small. And I say this to people now all the time, like, I'm my own lighting director. So are you now, right? With all the Zooms, like, who thought we would have needed to really be able to light ourselves up? So no job is too small. No job is too insignificant. And any opportunity is an opportunity. And that's something that Stuart Scott taught me. And I think it's the biggest takeaway from anything I could ever say. That's probably the most important thing I could tell anybody.
Genna, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try and reach out to you.
Absolutely.
This is a wealth of information, right? And try and build that network. They're going to say, "Okay, well, hey, Genna's somebody I want to have in my corner." Where can they go to learn more about you and find more about what you're doing, your podcast, and everything else?
Thank you for that. So my Instagram and my Twitter handles are Genna with a G, Genna, on the mark. And you can find everything there. My website link is on there. My podcast links are up there. But my podcast, if you just want to follow that, which there's been some great conversations, that's Your Voice on the Mark. Again, on Instagram and Twitter and anywhere you subscribe and listen to your favorite podcasts. And yeah, that's basically a good place to start for me. I feel like in today's day and age, social media is more important than websites. I feel like we all forget about our websites. I haven't looked at mine in I don't know how long. So social media is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. And now we got TikTok and Clubhouse. So
we do.
I think Wix might have some trouble here soon. But with all these websites here. But Genna, what is the kind of impact that you want to have on the world and your industry when it's all said and done?
I just want to be the person that brings engaging, fun conversations and content to people. I want to be, I don't necessarily want to be the next this person or that person. I just want people to enjoy watching or listening to whatever I'm doing. But then I also want the people I'm interviewing to want me to be the one interviewing them. So as long as people are having fun and engaging in what I'm doing, then I think that that's a pretty good impact to have. With women specifically, I hope to make this an easier world to live in for women. It's difficult for us, especially in sports, but in all forms of journalism, whether it's sports, entertainment, news, television, radio, newspaper, whatever medium. It's always been difficult for women, and hopefully I can be a voice and an advocate for helping and empowering women to make it a much more enjoyable place. If I can make a difference, I think, the charity work really is my life mission. I work with a lot of organizations. DJ Ari, who started out his career as the Miami Heat DJ, he has a foundation that helps with kids and gives them, music education tools so that they can have outlets from the environments they're in. I work with a group called the Orphan Starfish Foundation, which educates orphans all across the world. So if I could make a difference in that way and just, like I said, make one person's day better, let alone, bright, let alone life, that's a life well lived, I think.
Everybody needs a break, right? To get into the industry, whether it's through a networking opportunity, it's always good to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one, than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. So I think now COVID's given people a lot of extra time to sit around to do things, right? Or with that same time, people aren't doing anything. And so this is, I think, what I hope to accomplish with this podcast and through these interviews is to ultimately let you, right, come on and give the content to the audience that needs it, right? I mean, for me, there was a certain point where I needed to hear something that nobody would tell me, right? And it doesn't have to be friends or family or even know who you are, right? But it's just, there's something that, it's that aha moment, like you mentioned earlier, it's that light bulb going on. And that ultimately, gives you enough confidence and courage to take that first step without having to really see the whole staircase. Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time, and we wish you the best.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. This was really fun. Hopefully we'll maybe I'll have to be in Chicago for a game. We'll have to meet somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Absolutely. We can definitely make that happen. And I'd like to do, I always joke with people, the next time I have you on the show, we're going to be in person.
I love that idea. Yes. I mean, as much as Zoom is great,
Zoom has been a tool, but
can't wait for in person. I do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, and I love your podcast. So thank you for starting it, because it's really insightful for so many people.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.